Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. We're waking up with watches and starting our weekend off right. Reach out to me directly, tmosso at thewatchbox.com, if you see anything you like on this show, because everything is for sale. Purchase, sale, trade, watchbox.com. Reach out to tmosso at thewatchbox.com. Prices, references, and watch names are in the description below. Let's jump right in with a big piece. Launched in 2017 to celebrate the inauguration of Grand Seiko as a worldwide standalone brand, this is the SBGA 292, also known as the Pink Snowflake. This 39mm classically styled spring drive watch is extraordinary in aesthetics as well as technical specification. Now, the timepiece, of course, wearing easily on my 16cm circumference wrist, is the consummate dress watch. Elegant, discreetly detailed, handsomely featured with a combination of the Snowflake dial and a black polished red gold case, not rose, not pink, red gold, hand finished dial furniture, and the timepiece, despite being a dress watch, is 100 meters water resistant, so you're getting a lot for your money here. Let's take a close look at the dial. It is the Snowflake dial, originally launched on the SBGA 11, today the 211, but that's a sporting watch. This one's a bit more elegant and dress oriented. We have that same lovely ruffled fallen snow look across the dial, which involves 6 separate steps to create. All of the individual components of the dial, including the furniture, are beautifully hand finished. You can see that the indices, the frames, the logo, as well as the hands, faceted, diamond milled, and black polished in the fashion you often seen on fine Swiss movements. So you have a hand finished dial and a hand finished case, which is held directly against a spinning tin plate to create the optically smooth mirrored finish you see on the case, like Grand Seiko calls it Zaratsu. The one piece of irony is the clasp, which, as you can see, is one of the only parts on this watch not made in Japan, Italy. Heads up. Turn it all over and you get a special hot-rodded spring drive movement, whereas conventional spring drive, by the way, 3-day power reserve, has an accuracy of plus or minus 15 seconds a month. This one, and you see that because of the medallion, is the 9R15, accurate to plus or minus 10 seconds a month. Spring drive, no batteries, no capacitors, no stepper motors, all of the action and the smooth sweep of the hand due to the energy in the mainspring. A truly special watch. If you love the Snowflake but you want something a bit more elegant, graceful, and dress-oriented, this is the way to do it. Plus, if you want a handmade watch that your friends don't have, this is also the way to do it. Let's talk about something that's visually spectacular in an entirely different sense. This is officially the second generation El Primero movement. The El Primero Chronomaster II, 42mm with ceramic bezel and steel case, launched for the 50th anniversary of the El Primero movement back in 2019. It's a 250-piece limited series featuring the Fordyce-like striking 10th complication, and you can see there is a hand that makes one circuit of the dial every 10 seconds, allowing you to more easily read 1/10 of a second, which is the historic resolution of the 10 beat per second El Primero. Now you can see the dial is beautifully open. There is a circumferential skeletonized date wheel, the timepiece featuring an array of colors: red, gray, silver, and blue with black. It's when you turn it all over that you see that second generation El Primero. This is the caliber 3600. Now the watch, of course, 100 meters water resistant. It is a sports watch, and it's powered by the next generation of the El Primero, meaning for the first time, short of the Defy El Primero, you have a hacking seconds function. The El Primero historically did not have that. You also have a unlubricated, high-efficiency silicone escapement that never needs to be lubricated and thus does not age the way conventionally lubed escapements do. Moreover, the power reserve has been increased from 50 hours to 60 hours, and you can see it is a beautiful techno-industrial nickel anthracite movement with silvers and grays, a few blue screws, and violet pivot jewels thrown in. As ever, it is gorgeous. The El Primero has always been a good-looking column wheel chronograph, and you can see that column wheel in action. If you want one of the most important Zenith wristwatches in the history of a manufacturer that dates back to 1865, this has to be on your hit list. A timepiece that can easily be worn all the time as long as you put it on a water-resistant band. It manages to be resolutely Zenith with 1 foot in the 20th and 1 foot in the 21st century. The Chronomaster II with the second generation El Primero. Independent watchmaking is hot right now, but For the most part, I see a few brands being worshipped to the exclusion of others. Everyone loves Kari Voutilainen, but do we acknowledge the full breadth and scope of his work? The Maitre du Temps Chapter 3 seen here is a collaboration between Kari Voutilainen and Andreas Streller. Streller creating the industrialization to create the watch as well as the hidden complication, and Voutilainen ultimately guiding the architecture of the dial, the lugs, the crown, and the finishing of the movement. Let's take a look at what this 42mm rose gold watch does. It's a GMT with a moon phase, thanks to Andreas Streller, who creates a cloaked complication, hidden in its occultation. Let's push the crown back in and then open the hidden trapdoors. The hidden trapdoors do not just cover up the second time zone function, they actually retract vertically and return to their position vertically. Now what you're looking at is a double barrel system, two 12-hour barrels and one up at 12 o'clock, which is hand lacquered, by the way, that features an AM/PM, a man in the moon and a smiling sun. Now watch down at 6 o'clock as the second time zone, or I should say, the second 12-hour sequence of the second time zone becomes evident. Did you see that? The barrels jump back and forth. The barrels are a signature display of Maitre du Temps, which, like the old Harry Winston Opus collection, brought together great watchmakers to focus on not individual but combined endeavors, and this one is Maitre du Temps, Kari Voutilainen plus Andreas Streller. Now of course you can set the second time zone independently. By the way, look at the hand-painted man in the moon up at 12 o'clock. There is a small seconds, a date, and a moon phase, and you can adjust the two intermediate complications, the date and the moon phase, using an intermediate position of the crown and turning back and forth. Now if you wish to, for example, set the second time zone, you depress the pusher over at 9 o'clock on the dial, and then you make your local adjustment. I'm sorry, my nails aren't what they used to be. There we go. And now you could see how I disengage that second time zone, allowing me to set the local time independently. It is an absolute pleasure to operate, and if you take a look at the movement finished to Kari Voutilainen's specification, this is as good as it gets. The hand finishing is rich and extensive. It gives up nothing to Voutilainen's own work. Let's talk Rolex for a moment. I've picked a few of my favorites. I was at Baselworld 2016 when this watch arrived. The 116622 stainless steel with a solid platinum bezel. The watch acquired a dark rhodium dial. It's not ruthenium. This nickel anthracite color here is achieved with dark rhodium, a very intense and heavy application of the silvery metal typically applied to brass Swiss movements. But it's not the rhodium, it's the blue, the cyan blue that zings me with this dial. A timepiece at 40mm that's easy to wear, 100 meters water resistant, a COSC chronometer, and of course a wonderful accompaniment if you like to time anything from the kids' timeout to fish tacos on the grill. You have that bidirectional platinum timing bezel. It's thinner, flatter, and in profile more graceful than a modern GMT or Submariner. So this is a true all-arounder that can easily be your dress watch and stands out as a sports watch for any occasion. If you believe that old means soul, then this roughly 1975 Rolex 1680 Submariner date is for you. A dial often described as the pumpkin, and you can see why. Whether you prefer sweet potatoes or pumpkin, your choice of vegetation is yours solely. I'm simply the messenger. Now you have a matched bezel pearl, dial, and set of hands. Exceptionally rare. The watch, you'll note, is remarkably full for a timepiece of this vintage, as the lugs themselves are symmetrical, shapely, and retain their original metal to the point that you can almost see evidence of the original factory beveling still intact. There is a wonderful box section plexiglass on this. This is an old school Rolex Diver, and the timepiece is still accurate, still able to make its original chronometer tolerances. This watch features a 93150 bracelet from 1985 that's a bit newer and more robust than the 93150 that would have originally been fit to the timepiece. So it's a little bit more secure and a little bit more solid than if it were on a 1975 vintage bracelet. As you can see, the watch still looks the business, unmistakable, not just as a Rolex, but as a Rolex Submariner. It's the condition of the case and the symmetry of the bezel, the dial, and the hand patina that makes this an exceptional example and a great way to jump into vintage Rolex. If you haven't already taken the plunge, take a plunge with this sub. Figuratively speaking. figuratively. We don't want to dive with our vintage divers. This might be my favorite watch on the show today, and it is a very special piece. This is the Oyster Perpetual 116000, 36 millimeters. You can see it features a lovely domed bezel that gives it much the profile of the original bubble backs coined in the early 1930s. They were the first automatic winding, water-resistant Rolex sports watches. In many regard, a harbinger of what was to come, not just for Rolex, but for the industry as a whole. And the Oyster Perpetual is the closest living relative of that original bubble back. It even looks the part, as I mentioned, but what sets this watch apart is the radial array of numerals, the Explorer dial, and the metallic blue concentric center. You'll also note that Rolex likes to print books on its dial, but this one is artfully in a round-robin form. Oyster Perpetual, superlative, chronometer, officially certified. I love it. Somehow it seems more minimalist by being differently arrayed and artfully poised. Artfully arranged and artfully poised on my wrist. It's a great looking watch. It's an awesome unisex option. If you're looking for a graduation gift for your proud graduate, this is a great way to give someone a watch that'll last a lifetime, that feels inherently special without knowing anything about who made it or Rolex. This is a timepiece that simply stuns and makes do by essentially achieving more with less. And 100 meters, water resistant, automatic, a chronometer. It's got all of that good stuff too. Sticking with our sports watches, but going upscale. In 2016, Vacheron launched its third generation overseas. In 2018, it launched the one we all wanted, the Inverse Panda Dial Overseas Chronograph. This is a timepiece, 42.5 millimeters in steel, that has a lovely dial. As you can see, not just contrasting tones, but also recessed with polished chapter rings for the sub-registers. The hands, the logo, as well as the indices are white gold. The watch has a 52-hour automatic winding power reserve. My favorite function of this watch is actually a subsidiary function of the bracelet. We'll see if my nails are substantial enough to activate the quick release system, but you will note this watch, for the first time ever on an overseas, includes a quick release system for the bracelet. There is also a rubber strap. There is also a leather strap with this watch, both black, and not only is the bracelet removable using only a pull of the trigger, but you can see that every individual link on this bracelet on both sides is removable for precise sizing. It's hand finished in the tradition of Audemars Piguet and Patek Philippe hand finished sports watch bracelets, and you can really see the glint and the gleam of the black polish. But my favorite detail here is actually the micro adjustment system that's built into both sides of the clasp, each side with 1.5 millimeters of adjustability, allowing you to fine-tune along with the removable links. It is a brilliant system, and this is the best sports watch bracelet on the market today. The fact that you get a second deployant clasp and two straps with this watch is simply surpassing both of its competitors and of expectations. We also get the first overseas with a display case back and the first overseas chronograph with a manufacturer movement. Not only is it adjusted in 5 positions like a chronometer, but it is Geneva hallmark, meaning it bears the legendary Poinçon de Genève, and the finishing is all you would expect. But my favorite piece is the rotor, with black polish, chiseling, satination, and media blasting. It's a work of art in its own right. Now, the timepiece features lovely detailed elements like this black polished Geneva hallmark caliber, Maltese cross capped column wheel. The watch is 150 meters water resistant, more than the overseas chrono, more than any Nautilus or Aquanaut, and it features a paramagnetic ring around the movement, so it is also 25,000 ampere per meter anti-magnetic. The ISO standard for an anti-magnetic watch is 4800. This is 25,000. Very impressive. I'll also demonstrate how easy it is to put back together, since I know you're probably going to want to see a wrist shot of this one, and I don't blame you. It's this simple. If you've got a fingernail and you've got, I would say, 7 fingers, you can put this watch back together or break it down. Easy to wear and flatter than you might expect. It's broad and it's nicely curved around the wrist, so though it's a substantial piece, somewhere between a Nautilus chronograph and a Royal Oak offshore, it can be considered superlative, superior even, to either one in its way. If you think Rolex is bourgeois and Vacheron Constantin too rich for your tastes, then there is Omega. And since 2019, we've had the Seamaster Diver 300-meter chronograph in its latest spec. 44 millimeters with a ceramic bezel insert, 300-meter water resistance, helium escape valve for saturation divers. You have a ceramic dial, a ceramic bezel insert, and blue ceramic chronograph pushers. The timepiece features a lovely chromium-plated ceramic dial. You can see the elements of gray and blue working in a handsome medley with the classical James Bond style skeleton hands. This is the same essential style that debuted in 1993 and rose to fame on the wrist of Pierce Brosnan during his run as 007. Now, what I love about this watch is that unlike the standard Diver 300 meter, which features a decontented time only and date movement, this one features the full fat 9900 chronograph caliber. So we have the independent stepping hour hand, we have the twin barrels, and we have the 60-hour power reserve. New for 2018 and carried over onto the 2019 chronograph is a diving clasp that features both a push button slider, 9.6 millimeters incremental, and a fold out all or nothing dive extension. You now get both. Of course, there is also, for the first time on series production, Diver 300 meter chronographs, a display caseback. It's a master chronometer, it is amagnetic, it is shock resistant, it features both vertical clutch and a column wheel, and the George Daniels coaxial escapement in its latest tri-level form, meaning this watch is tough. It's resilient, anti-magnetic, shock resistant, water resistant, helium resistant, and very, very accurate. On the wrist, it's substantial, but it's the thinking man's alternative to a Royal Oak offshores. Technically, it's more sophisticated, and ergonomically, I find it more agreeable. I can recommend it for a wrist as small as 15 centimeters circumference. And you can see, it's not that thick on the wrist. We also have one with a full blue dial, so if you like this, but you'd love that one, take note, available. All right, let's reach for the very top of the pile right here. The uppermost shelf, launched in 2009 in black ceramic and platinum of a 300-piece limited edition. This is the Jaeger LeCoultre Amvox III Tourbillon GMT. As you can see, it's the Amvox case form that we loved on the Amvox II chronograph, but with more complication and with a variant upgraded of a movement that once won a chronometry trial with a deviation of under 50 seconds a year. That's what this caliber 988 is capable of when regulated properly. Now, the watch features platinum hardware on a nearly scratch-proof ceramic case. It includes a GMT function that allows you to hide or, if you wish, deploy that second time zone. Now, what I really like is that there is a radial date indicator and a jump from the 31st to the 1st across the bottom of the dial. And during that night, you can see that the complication jumps the entire span of the tourbillon so as not to obscure it. So, as we jump to a new month, it makes a one-night leap across the bottom span of the dial. Now, it is a combination of the Polaris 68 with 20th century Jaeger instruments as featured in Aston Martin cars. So this is no astroturfed shotgun marriage. Jaeger and Aston Martin have a relationship that lasted from the 1920s through the 1990s. This is real history, immortalized for the first time with the Aston Martin logo on a Jaeger product rather than the other way around. Now, you look at the caliber 988 48-hour automatic winding power reserve, but what's really special is it's bifurcated with the upper bridge for the winding system nickel anthracite and the lower bridge silvered rhodium. If you look, you can see that there is a platinum iridium winding mass and a carbon fiber rotor, both technologies brought over from the 2007 Extreme Lab 1. In combination with unidirectional winding and ceramic rotor bearings, I believe this might be the most efficient winding sports watch of all time. Highly scratch resistant if, like me, you hate the scratches and scuffs, and on one of the best straps I've ever encountered. It's a watch that wears lighter than you'd expect given the platinum hardware thanks to the scratch resistance of the ceramic. This is a big boy complication. A lot of you say, Tim, I want to see affordable watches, and I do my best to deliver. We sell the high-end watch to the high-end customer, but I haven't forgot the watches that, in general, I would buy myself, and this Fordyce Stratoliner is exactly that. As you can see, a timepiece that is approximately 42 millimeters in diameter. It's really somewhere between 42 and 43, as I mentioned. It has a steel case, a scratch-resistant ceramic bezel, a day and a date complication, and wonderful luminescence that looks romantic by day and bright by night. The timepiece, as you can see, is 100 meters water-resistant with a 46-hour power reserve powered by a 7750. It wears easily on my wrist, and I think we're going to do our first lume shot of the show with this one. If you want to get into a real luxury brand and a lifetime watch, but not spend a ton of money, and you have a taste for complications, this one gives you two, as well as swimmability. So let's fire up my lights, and, well, let's extinguish the fire. Charged up, you can see it's a lot like a Zin EZM, like my Zin EZM 11, and that's exactly the look that I get. I could have mistaken this for my own watch, which is sitting nearby. A great way to get into true luxury watches and sports complications without spending a mint. Heck, this watch probably costs less than a few links and a Nautilus bracelet. Okay, FP Journe. Now, you guys know I'm a bit of a Journe skeptic. I'm not a fanboy of the brand. I evaluate them objectively and dispassionately, but every once in a while there is a Journe watch that captures my imagination and, I must admit, my heart. And this Chronometre Souverain Black Label is that. Not just a boutique exclusive, but a watch for which you must prove prior purchase of a new FP Journe timepiece. This is doubly exclusive, with only 2 examples per model made per year. It's important to note that this Chronometre Souverain is the classic Journe chronometer, launched in the mid-2000s and immediately renowned for its thin profile and exacting precision. The combination of the Black Label platinum case and black dial makes this 40mm ultra-thin timepiece both accurate and visually scintillating. On my 16cm circumference wrist, absolutely no trouble wearing it. It's comfortable, it's flat, it'll slide under a cuff, and the caliber 1304 is gorgeous. You can see that not only is the watch platinum, but the movement itself is red gold. And as you can see, this is one of the earliest examples of a Black Label Chronometre Souverain because it uses the French-made Eleanor crafted cases. Black Label came out in 2008, and the Eleanor cases were phased out in 2008. So this is not just a rare watch. This is a rare example of a rare watch, and you can see the French and the Swiss hallmarks on the crown side. The movements were made of red gold, but the most exceptional feature is the hidden drivetrain. You can see the escapement and the balance, you can see the 2 mainspring barrels, but you can't see the transmission of power between them, and that is a product of a drivetrain that is run entirely under the dial. So FP Journe, you and I have some disparities in philosophy, and I don't think we'd hang, but this watch is awesome. I would love to hang with this model. That said, I do love me some complications, and this watch right here is a living legend. Launched in 2017, it was the final of the Vagabond Dodge tonneau watch series, and you might note that this Vagabond Dodge III, made in 68 pieces in rose gold, appears to be scrolling through its seconds, which it's not supposed to do, and that's because when you get below 10 hours of power reserve, the watch defaults from jumping seconds to scrolling seconds. Simply wind the watch, and you note immediately the jumping seconds function is back in business. It's a jump hour, jumping second, power reserve, and rose gold. About 45mm by 37.5mm across and 8.5mm thick. This is a watch that wears well on any wrist. It features a constant force device, a remontoire d'égalité, that maintains constant amplitude of the balance for the first 3/4 of the power reserve, and it allows the jumping seconds function to operate. So remontoire, jump hour, jumping second, power reserve. It is a quadruple complication. Flat, flush, and easy to wear under a cuff. It features an unusual accessory for a Journe watch, a full deployant clasp, and of course here too we have a red gold movement, red gold case, red gold movement, and if you take note, there is a smoked sapphire over the dial side of the movement, and the watch includes beautiful hand finishing. One of the best examples of anglage I found on a Journe watch. Some of them appear more machined than others. This one has a wonderful mirrored bevel that looks more handmade than a conventional Journe anglage. The Vagabond Dodge series was special in every way. Of course, a form movement, because the original Vagabond Dodge 1, created for the anniversary of the Antiquorum auction house, that was a movement FP Journe had left over from his THA days, and it was developed for a Cartier Tortue that was never created. He cased up the movement in a tonneau case, and he removed his name from the dial because the Vagabond Dodge 1 was not as accurate as he would have preferred. As a result, it became a tradition. So while this watch keeps time to the standard FP Journe expects of his own watches, he is run with the original theme of an unadorned and unbranded dial, making this watch quite special in the pantheon of Journe watches and even Journe limited editions. Patek Philippe, and why not? The 5905 arrived at Baselworld 2015, and for some it was a bigger, bolder 5960. Taking the 5205 annual calendar dial and combining it with the mono-counter flyback chronograph of the 5960, the 5905 grew larger, and it replaced the 5960's conventional index dial with perhaps the most special sector dial you'll ever find, as the entire sector effect, both the chapter rings and the indices, created with metal and polish. You'll also note there's a 60-minute chronograph register down at 6 o'clock. I prefer that to conventional chronograph because, let's face it, you tend to time things between 0 and 60 minutes and omit the hours. A 30-minute register often doesn't help. There is also a flyback chronograph capability, and if you want, you can use the flyback effectively as a hacking seconds by leaving the chronograph running and just treating the seconds hand as the seconds to the hours and the minutes. The watch is automatic winding with a 55-hour power reserve and an annual calendar, which you can see an aperture form across the top of its metallic sunburst blue dial. Bigger than the 5960, which was a 40.5. This is 42, but it gains gorgeous concave sculpted lug profiles to visually pair the mass. You'll also note the use of a clever trick of the eye, a concave bezel profile. Being platinum, it has a diamond between the lugs because that is the signature of platinum watches at Patek Philippe. Now, the watch is substantial and it is heavier than a 5960. So if you thought the 5960 was a little bit too, I don't know, petite for your He-Man wrist, well, this might be just what the doctor ordered. In any case, I probably prefer it for its clean and uncluttered dial compared to the somewhat busier 5960, and as you can see, it wears just fine on my wrist size. Now, when you flip it over, the movement's gorgeous. Vertical clutch, column wheel, 6-position adjustment, free sprung, Patek Philippe seal, 4 Hz beat rate, gyro max balance, all of this, and guaranteed accurate to -3 + 2 seconds a day from the factory. Extensively hand finished. There is absolutely nothing here that disappoints, whether viewed with the naked eye or a 20 power loop. If you want fine finish, gorgeous case sculpting, and a friendly complication tandem of an annual calendar and a flyback chronograph, the 5905 is a great way to go. It's also loomed, so this is an all-around watch for all occasions except the water, but hey, that's why you've got your Nautilus. And if you wish to get wet and wild, this watch, 100 meters water resistant and wild, is just what the doctor ordered. The doctor from Lecoultre, Switzerland. This is the Zenith Defy El Primero 21, launched in this form in 2017. This pan-dial model with a lovely chrome metallic center is probably the rarest modern Zenith complication not priced in the 6 figures. I've scarcely seen any of these. This is the first of the titanium case, titanium bezel, pan-dial Defy 21s that I have seen since the watch came out. 44 millimeters in grade 5 titanium. It's both lighter than steel and more scratch resistant, and it wears easily on a small wrist because of the Defy case shape. The watch is spectacular thanks to a caliber 9004 El Primero that has 2 separate movements and 2 separate power reserves. Now, what's interesting about this watch is that it has a manual wind 50-minute power reserve with a power reserve indicator for the chronograph, and then it has a automatic winding 50-hour power reserve for the El Primero time-telling functions. What's cool is that this Tourbillon is 1/100th of a second, so I can read 1/100th of a second. What's even cooler is that when you turn the watch over, you realize not only are there 2 mainspring barrels in this watch, there are 2 separate escapements, power reserves, going trains, and balances. One beating away at 100 beats per second, well, that's actually this one right here, and then one beating away at 10 beats per second, and that's the one with the larger balance and the unlubricated silicon escapement. It's also the first ever El Primero caliber that features hacking seconds, not for the chronograph, but for the time. The chronograph can actually run separately from the time. The watch is also a COSC chronometer, which means it is absolutely groaning with refinements and features. It even has a cool sound to it that I don't know how to describe other than it's a little bit like walking into a sewing machine convention. I'll hold it up to the mic. Tell me if you can hear it. It's a bit like the old Bugatti EB110 at Idle, with its V12 and 5 valves per cylinder. A very cool watch and super easy to wear on the wrist, being summer-friendly, wrist-friendly, water-resistant, and ultimately probably the best of the modern Zenith collection. This watch, however, would dispute the notion. This is officially the first of the breed. 250 pieces for 2019, the 50th anniversary of the El Primero, the Chronomaster II, and the first of the second generation El Primero movements. 42 millimeters in steel, 250 pieces, a 10-second ceramic scratch-resistant bezel. This watch was, of course, also offered as part of a three-piece set, the past, the present, and the future of Zenith. This watch is not part of the set, so it's available independently from the others. Now, it features the striking 10th complication, which allows you to, for the first time ever, use the 10 beat per second resolution of the El Primero movement, as you can easily register tenths of a second using this Foudroyant-like display. Now, the timepiece also features the Zenith overlapping tricolore at center for the registers, and if you'll note, there is a skeletonized date wheel that runs below, but it's the caliber 3600 that's the star here. A few more features added. For the first time in a non-Defy El Primero, we have a hacking seconds function. Power reserve rises from 50 to 60, and as ever, we have one of the best feeling column wheel actions in the business. It has an unlubricated silicone escapement, so it's more stable as a timekeeper between services, and you can see even styling flourishes like the spiral spokes of the intermediate driving wheel of the chronograph have been added. This is a timepiece that remains the best of everything the El Primero was, while pointing the direction of the future. Firsts are both famous and rare in this industry, and this is the first of the second generation El Primero, a truly special watch. And as with the Defy, 100 meters water resistant, so you can swim with it. It features a full deployant clasp and an alligator leather strap with a lovely contrasting silver stitch and a rubber underlay for souplesse against the skin. This is a special watch and one of the best on the show. It might even be my favorite. This, however, is the funkiest watch on the show. Launched in 99 pieces in blackened titanium for 2015, this is the Rolex Subcraft by Ellis Silberstein. From 1985 to 2012, Silberstein, a French architect turned watchmaker, was the definition of avant-garde as well as postmodern, and one of the very first to open an independent watch brand. These days, he's done collaborations with everyone from Rolex to Louis Arad to MB&F, and he is suddenly cool and respected as he deserved to be. But it's not just his variation on the 2013 spacecraft. No, the Subcraft is more than that. The movement is exactly as you would have seen on the MB&F HM5 or HM10. It is an Agénor jumping hour movement. So you can see in profile, as I roll through the minutes, the watch includes a jumping hour complication viewable in a driver's watch format, as the Subcraft, contrary to its space origins as the spacecraft, this is actually the consummate driver's watch. Agénor, you may know, has worked on everything from Harry Winston Opus series watches to Roger Dubuis to timepieces such as this that are collaborations. It's worked with MB&F. This timepiece is Agénor inside and Ellis Silberstein externally. All of that and its automatic winding with a wonderful Bund-style strap. The timepiece is about 40.5 millimeters across by 52.5 millimeters end to end if you include the crown. It's an easily wearable shape, and as you can see, most of the wrist footprint is actually the strap. So this timepiece, the only Rolex that has ever stolen my heart, appeals in every way. I love driver's watches. I love Silberstein, I love Agénor, I love jump hours. This timepiece sings. This timepiece, true to its driver's watch intent, fires on all cylinders. And now we have a watch that splits the difference between a driver's watch and an aviation watch. Based on last year's Tag Heuer Autobeque, this is the Autobeque Bronze, 42 millimeters in bronze with a titanium caseback and a ceramic bezel insert. This timepiece featuring a bi-directional timing bezel. Let's hear the detent. One of the best sounding and feeling bidirectional bezels I've experienced. It has a lovely gradient khaki dial that fades from khaki green at its center, olive drab, to black at its edge with a pebbly granular-like surfacing. It features a little bit of calculated fauxtina for a handsome off-white complement to the colors of the case and the dial, and then it's a COSC certified chronometer with 100-meter water resistance, wearing easily on a smaller wrist. This is a timepiece that's full-sized but not oversized. Turn it all over and you can see that aviation and automotive intent with the superimposed spoked wheel and propeller. This is a timepiece that represents the best of the Autobeque, both historically and in the present day. But if you don't want to mix and match or you're not into driving, let's go with a pure pilot's watch. This is the 43mm red, gold, and steel Breitling Navitimer B01. 70-hour power reserve, vertical clutch, column wheel, COSC chronometer, slide rule, logarithmic scale bezel that can be used for multiplication and division. It's calibrated for flight functions. And if you love the Navitimer, first launched in 1954, yeah, I know they say 52, it was 54, then you know what this watch is all about. This is the pilot's watch, and probably the longest continuously produced chronograph made by any brand. Now, what's new here is a display caseback and contrasting registers. Georges Kern wants you to know that when you see tone-on-tone registers on a modern Breitling watch, the CEO tells you that means an in-house caliber, and rarely seen in the Schneider era. Here we have a display caseback, and surprise, the B01, previously rarely seen, is a great looking movement. You could see the column wheel in action. The vertical clutch ensures the action is smooth and you can leave it running continuously with no wear and tear. COSC certified and thus very, very accurate. This is a timepiece that gives you a little bit of richness. It's not just a pilot's watch, it is a private plane pilot's watch or passenger's companion. This is about flying in style. Somewhere between a sports watch and a dress watch is this stainless steel, yes, I said stainless steel, Laurent Ferrier Galet Traveler, 41mm with the signature pebble shape, as though it had been weathered by a babbling brook over eons. That babbling or bubbling brook has less effect on the dial, which features combination of nickel anthracite coating. Note the center is vertically satin finished and white varnished indices and hands. Now you have a stepper system for the travel time function, and as you'll note, you are able to drive the date forward or backwards with that local time zone as you travel. There is a 24-hour second time zone over at 9 o'clock. It's in a 24-hour format. You can see if I turn it back, we go back to 24. Turn it all over, 80-hour power reserve, automatic winding, 6-position adjustment. No jokes here. Double direct impulse, unlubricated escapement with nickel phosphorus wheels directly impulsing the balance. There is no Swiss lever. This is designed after the Abraham Louis Breguet natural escapement of 1802. The idea is to improve precision by reducing parasitic losses and improve power reserve. Automatically wound up to 80 hours of reserve by this lovely guilloche cut winding mass that uses a jeweled staff and ratchets to wind silently. There is a black polished half bridge for the rotor, all screw heads black polished with chamfered slots in circumference, and note the use of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 interior angles, and bevels so broad you don't even need a loop to appreciate them. I believe this finish is up to the standard set by Lange, albeit in a Baroque Geneva style rather than East German. I believe this surpasses standard Patek Philippe as well as Vacheron and certainly Audemars Piguet. A large watch, I'm not going to lie to you, it's almost 50mm across the wrist. It's no shrinking violet, but at under 13mm thick, it is quite thin. This is a great way to get into independent watchmaking with a brand that features the best finish in the industry, short of the likes of Grubel, Forsey, Dufour, Lang und Heine. This is right up in that kind of company. And again, in steel, it's just more durable. You don't have to worry as much about wearing it under a cuff, scratching it, or scuffing it. It can take the knock. It was always going to come to this, the big piece, and one of my personal favorites, vintage inspired, the peak of the Chrysler building on your wrist, the mile-high Streamliner 30s in the modern era. Launched in 2003, this is the Patek Philippe Gondolo 5101P, a watch with a salmon dial, black and white gold indices and hands, an incredible triple-stepped Gadroon form case, arcing like the grille of a 1938 Lincoln Zephyr. This timepiece is a piece of the Art Deco era that stays with you, bound to your wrist and seared into your heart. Platinum with the diamond between the lugs. This is a 10-day power reserve tourbillon chronometer with power reserve indicator. The vaulted peaks of its case giving way to one of the most spectacular form movements you will ever encounter. The earlier versions of this watch, and this model was launched in 2003, featured the original Poisson de Genève rather than the later Patek Philippe seal, the caliber 2820 with a 10-day power reserve, and it features a free-sprung balance beaten away at 21.6 6-position adjustment, or pardon me, 5-position chronometer style adjustment, because it is a COSC chronometer. After 2009, these were no longer COSC certified. What I love here is that the decoration is up to the occasion imparted by the watch. So you can see that there are interior angles flanking the center wheel. The entire carriage for the tourbillon, as well as the continuously rounded and specular finished bridge, all in optically smooth mirrored black. And you can see the same finish lavished on the screw heads. The train is actually fitted to golden chaton, so you can see, just like the pocket watch era, the train, particularly the 2 mainspring barrels, set in golden chaton. You'll also appreciate the fact that God is in the details here, and this is a rare application of an overcoil hairspring on a Patek Philippe watch. So between the power reserve indicator, the 10-day reserve, the chronometer certification, the tourbillon, and a watch that is 51.6 millimeters from lug to lug, but only about 12.3 millimeters thick, you have the big piece that doesn't wear like a big bully. It's acceptable on any wrist. This is a timepiece that flies a mile below the radar, simultaneously as high as the peaks of the Chrysler Building and as low as the treetops. This is a timepiece worthy of all-time status. It is my favorite watch on the show. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. Reach out to tmosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details, additional photos, condition, and accessories for anything you see here. As ever, time out, Tim out, and thanks for logging on.